Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome. This is the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode 47. We're going to talk today a little bit about soil sampling and our spring fertilizer plans. I'm Morgan Hayes, an assistant professor in Biosystems and Ag Engineering here at the University of Kentucky, focusing on livestock facilities. And in my personal life, I farm in Boyle County, Kentucky with my husband. We have a 500-acre commercial cattle and hay operation.
And I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Biosystems and Agriculture Engineering as well, where I focus on precision livestock farming. In my personal life, we raise registered Angus cattle and focus on some goat production and hay production as well.
Okay, Josh, before we get started on our topic of the day, what's happening on the farms this week?
So this past week, we actually went and did a whole bunch of soil sampling. So we soil sampled about 200 some odd acres, just getting or different fields where we're meant to have different management strategies. So did a bunch of soil sampling, and then we also, another group, so my other brother, he weaned calves this weekend. So at some point, the calves broke out into our front lot, and another point, we had a couple open gates and the cows got out. So we just had a lot of cows going where they shouldn't be. But once we got it all settled around, it's all been fine since then. But did a lot of soil sampling this weekend, planning for future fertilization applications, hopefully.
Well, that'll be a good topic here. Good lead in. I should have maybe done my update first, since I did not do any of that this week. Things that we did this week, we successfully did get the fence up that we were aiming for last week. That was a huge deal. I'm thoroughly enjoying not having to take the dogs out on a leash in the rain. And my senile old dog, that he's not accidentally going to wander away, which, I mean, still could happen, to be completely honest. He is that crazy, but it's less likely at this point.
Yep.
Also, the child is less likely to get out of the yard without some form of
assistance or a lot of effort, I guess.
Yeah, a little eye contact there on my part might catch him before he gets too far away. So those are all positives. Other than that, we've been feeding hay, selling hay, had a couple deliveries that were a little bit longer duration, took a little bit more time this week. And so just generally normal farm stuff going on.
Okay. Just everything, just getting the hay. Took longer? It's just for location wise?
Yeah, just a couple deliveries that were a little bit further away took, a few more hours. Instead of a trip just to town to deliver hay, they were trips that took an hour each way, things like that. So
eats up a good portion of your weekend there.
Yep. So normal things. Other than that, though, it's been pretty low key. We were at Farm Machinery Show last week and through the weekend, and that obviously you were there through the weekend. I was not. But that takes up a bunch of time as well.
Yep. So we had the last day was Saturday, and so I was there pretty much all day. You could hear the whoosh of everybody leaving at 4:30 or something.
You didn't leave with them?
I didn't leave with them. I want them to get out of the way, so I don't have to worry about traffic as much. So.
Oh, okay. That's not a bad plan. I left right at 5 on Thursday night. And that might have been a mistake. I might have been better off to just sit quietly in the booth for an extra 20 minutes, and I probably still would have gotten out at the same time. But
probably so. Yeah, I sat there until about 5:40 and it was smooth sailing. So.
Yeah. Not a bad plan, I don't think. So the Farm Machinery Show was last week, and that took up a little bit of time, I think, for you
a little bit of time. Yeah, so I was there all week, so it definitely took up a little bit of time, so I had to manage the cows and give hay when I could.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about we'll come back to our topic for the day about soil sampling and fertilizer application.
Yep. So, a lot of our soil sampling done, we just take random samples throughout the field. So we take random samples, and wherever we have a uniform management strategy, wherever we try to make that into one quote unquote field. There's a couple fields where they're actually break them into 3, but we know there's different sections within that field, and they need different management strategies. So one's kind of down by a stream, and it's got really good soil, and then there's another part that's kind of more of a hillside, and it's not so great. And so we can manage those sections differently, knowing that they're different quality or need different levels of nutrients.
That makes complete sense. Yeah, we tend to manage fields as individual fields. But we do have 1 or 2 spots where we will break a field out. We have one field in particular that is wet and swampy on one side, and on the other side we have really nice clover growth,
Okay.
and a decent hay that we can take for hay. The other side we can bale for hay, but it's definitely not getting sold, and sometimes the cows are not super happy. It's got too much swamp grass in it, so
Right. Not as palatable for.
yeah. It's not really swamp grass, but it's definitely a marshier grass. It's definitely something that's got a little bit more fiber to it. It's for to eat.
Okay, not as digestible. And and this year for us, it's going to be interesting to see what we end up doing because the fertilizer prices have come down somewhat. I've seen them come down somewhat, so it's not as bad as it was last year. I think you had skipped fertilizing altogether.
Yeah, we skipped fertilizing altogether, and we took our soil samples in the fall, so we have all of our results in already. So we're currently purchasing our fertilizer for spring.
Okay.
So we're figuring that out. But for us, and this, I don't know how you handle this, but we don't tend to apply our fertilizers. We tend to purchase the fertilizer from our dealer and then have him apply it for us. And there's two reasons for that. One, and this is a big one, is time.
Yeah.
It saves us a lot of time. And the other reason is because he can get a pretty accurate and even distribution of fertilizer. Because we're not using a GPS system, we don't have any fancy things like that. And if we were using a buggy, we'd be spreading with a buggy, which is not the most uniform of a spray pattern out of it. So instead, we get him to apply, our dealer to apply it out of a spray rig.
Okay.
And that seems to work well for us.
I know, like we just had problems in the past as far as getting people just to show up to do stuff we've had problems. So a lot of times if there was a buggy available, we would go and grab it if we could and spread ourselves. So
Yeah.
it does take time, but we did at some point get a light bar, and that does, it's helpful for a lot of the bigger fields. Some of the small fields you can kind of see or know where you're going, and you do get some overlap. It's mainly in just some pastures you get some overlap, but I know the cows will take care of it. So.
Yeah. So for us, having someone else spread. But this year, what we have is a very consistent. We're going to throw some nitrogen down on everything to push grass out of the ground this spring.
Yep.
But the other thing is that we need potassium in most of our fields. And because we didn't put any on last year, a little bit more than we would typically put on as just a general maintenance level.
Right.
So we'll be applying those two things. Our phosphorus is a lot less consistent between fields. So we have one or two fields that are pretty low on phosphorus and other ones that are doing fine. And those that are low, we may use a buggy to apply a little bit here
and there.
There. We also might do some DAP, which we'll see what we end up doing. If we do that, then that would be extra nitrogen, which means we might wait until after the first cutting of hay comes off. So when we throw the DAP down, get that phosphorus, that extra nitrogen isn't wasted, that we can utilize it on a second growth on grass depending on summer goes. So that may be our strategy is to approach it like that.
Okay. Yeah, our approach has typically been so we kind of try to do some field management level if we can get a couple uniform, like maybe some that need a little more love, some that need a little less. And so we try to balance it out a little bit. And we pretty much fill up a buggy, spread what we can, fill up another buggy with the high concentration, spread what we can. So we try to hit, highs and lows. And, there's one year and I asked Jimmy Henning this one time, and it's like, should I focus on, just applying what the field needs, or maybe should I apply that low level across the board? He seemed to suggest, kind of that low level across the board, just because that way maybe one field or one section may perform a little better than expected. So everybody gets a little bit, you might see a little bit additional performance, as opposed to having one field that performs very well and nothing else do anything.
And how was you haven't had your results come in yet, but did you do any liming in the fall?
We did some liming. There was some fields, and we didn't soil test this one because it's a new kind of property we're looking at, but we didn't do any soil testing, but we knew we saw enough brome sage that we knew it probably needed some lime, and it hadn't had anything for the past 30 years.
So you went ahead and made an application just on the assumption that it was going to need some.
It's going to need some lime. So get the lime, get the pH right, and I know it's probably off, and get the pH right, then go ahead and get some nutrients to it.
Yeah, we limed. That's one of the reasons we did our soil testing early, is because we did actually get lime on the fields this fall. And actually, we got them on just before we got a little bit of rain so that it had a little bit of chance to settle in.
That's good.
Our neighbors, I'm sure, got plenty of lime from us too, though. It's been very dry, in the fall. And just the way that worked, we spread lime and they gained a little bit of lime. And then I have other neighbors that spread lime too, and we gained theirs. So I'm not sure that we came out exactly even on that trade, but
Just depends on how the wind was blowing that day.
It's exactly right. We definitely lost a little bit of lime to that wind, but we did get a lot onto the fields. It looked like it snowed in early November, late October. So
Yeah, I know that's one thing we have to think about as well. It's just Mercer County lime is probably 50% effective, and then I think Boyle County lime is almost 95% effective. So if you get the Boyle County was actually, or Caldwell, I guess.
The Caldwell
lime.
Yeah, Boyle County actually has two. This is an interesting thing. We have two separate quarries that we can use, and one is significantly better than the other.
Yes.
So we have one that's closer to us and one that's a little bit further onto the east side of the county, and it's not nearly as effective. But both of them are probably still more effective than the one we get in the northern. So no complaints. We put a lot of lime on and local quarry, and that will be very effective for us, and hopefully that will mean we don't have to apply lime next year.
Okay. Yeah, we applied lime probably 2 years ago, so it's probably the time for us to reapply. So I applied some to where last year I knew where it was going to be a problem, but we'll probably look at the soil test this year and see where it needs lime. Try to keep, if it's above 2, we'll go ahead and apply.
Yeah, and I will say that the broom sage thing we also use as an indicator, but all of my forage folks are going to correct us here and tell us that could also be an indicator of some of your other nutrients being out of whack, and I think phosphorus in particular.
Phosphorus in particular, yeah. So it's definitely going to be phosphorus as well, but just based on the fact that nothing's been done to that property for 30 years, I'm fairly certain that pH is off.
And for anyone who's not from central Kentucky here, we always need lime. It's ironic because we're on a limestone base here in this area, but because of how water comes through and some of the factors of our soil types, we tend to always run a pH that becomes slightly acidic.
Yes, that's true. And then by the time you apply your other fertilizers, it is also going to add to that acidity to a certain degree. So by the time you do improve that with maintenance and adding fertilizer, you're also having to re-up your lime.
Yep. So that's just very common in this area that we would add lime at least on a every other year, every third year basis for most of our fields here in this area. That's pretty consistently our. Otherwise, we sit with a pH that's just a little bit too low for some of the grasses that we want growing to thrive.
And so a lot of that, like I said, the brome sage, it's that issue with the nutrients are being off, and so that's just one of the indicators.
Right. So yeah, there's lots of things, but we have our lime on, we have our soil test done, and we're planning for our fertilizer. For us, we're going to target sort of an average hay number over most of the fields. Almost everything needs at least 100 pounds. A lot of things asked for about 180 pounds. We're probably going to apply 150. We had some fields that were at 130. And so we're just going to sort of broadly across all of them hit that 150 pound mark. That's going to be a reasonable target. It's going to be expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely.
But that way we're sort of back in line, and that way we aren't, even if we don't fully satisfy the need or the recommendation from our soil test, we're at least getting ourselves back into a range where we're not really limiting anything aggressively.
You're not in the extremely low category.
Exactly. We're going to move everything at least into the medium category in some capacity. Some might still sit at the very high end of low, but better to be at the high end of low than to be in the high category because it costs too much to get into the high category.
Yeah.
So that's sort of our plan right now.
And the other thing, if you are towards that low, we get a pretty good response for the most part.
Yep. Anything we add from very low and the lower end of the low category to push us up is going to give us a
decent response. And I tell people, you apply that fertilizer, you're pretty much buying hay. in
Yeah.
essence.
We always struggle with how much nitrogen to add. If we look at the recommendations from our soil test, it tells us to add 100 pounds and then another 100 pounds and then something else. And sometimes it's possible to add nitrogen twice, but it's not always possible. But that first round of nitrogen really pushes the grass early.
Yes.
And depending on how this year goes, we might need that. I will actually say that I went out this morning and all of the daffodils in my yard were in bloom.
Really?
And my grass is green right now. It's been warm. And it's still very early. So we could have a lot of grass growing if we apply fertilizer right now early, or we might get a freeze and it might knock everything back again.
To dormancy.
So it's hard to tell exactly how this first cutting is going to go. But if we can get at least the grass growing after a drought last year to make sure we get some root structure so that we get some growth and regrowth this summer, it's going to be important.
I know you're going to try to apply, like ours is kind of mid-March, I think is what we're kind of shopping for application potentially.
Yeah, I think we would target a late March, early April application. That's typically our goal.
Okay.
But it's not a guarantee. It'll depend on weather. If we get good dry weather in middle of March, we're definitely going to apply then. And if it's sopping wet and we have to wait till the middle of April to get a dry enough field to not have a lot of compaction, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
We don't want to be looking to do it in late May. That's not our goal.
No.
We want to get it before the grass really takes off. And to be completely honest, we could probably do it this week the way the weather has been. So, but I think there's probably another cold snap coming our way in the next few days.
Yeah, with it being going to be a high of 70 today, that does kind of lead you in that false insecurity.
That's right. So that's sort of our plan for fertilizer. We're going to hire the application. We're going to do a more uniform level over everything because it's a lot less expensive for us to have them do one level of application over more acres rather than have them try and do 5 acres this way and 10 acres this way. The chance of me getting someone out there to do that is much less.
Yep.
If I pay them to do 100 or 120 acres with one application rate over all of it, I get a much higher priority for getting that application done in the spring at the time I want it.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, for us, we're going to try to apply a high and low rate on some of our fields, just depending on what they need, and then also we'll go in there, spread it ourselves, and try to get as much done as quickly as possible. So we'll usually try to run. We'll try to get, if we can, 2 buggies, and run it that way. So that way you can take one back. As you're taking one back, you bring another one there to the farm. So that's kind of one where we try to help.
So you have one family member running the buggy with the truck and one person applying with the tractor. Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
And so it keeps them going.
Yeah, we're lucky that our fertilizer dealer is very close, so we do have the potential to use a buggy. When we were at the farm show, we had a couple people mention that they didn't have buggies, or their local fertilizer dealer cooperative was getting rid of the buggy system either for insurance reasons or for some other reason, and that changes the dynamic quite a bit for fertilizer application for small farms like us.
Oh yeah, and I think there was a couple that were talking about producers have to potentially get their own buggy, and so that would definitely change dynamics, I think, for a lot of people within my county, especially.
Yeah, for me, if I couldn't pay someone else to apply and I had to have a buggy, I would really have to consider what my strategy was going to be, and it would also be probably an opportunity for another small business area, because people spread lime. That is a business model for people.
Yep.
And so I could see where someone could have a buggy and use it and do application as a small business if the buggies weren't rentable or usable. I guess borrowable, I guess, is more accurate.
Yeah, I think the other challenge is you get people who tear up buggies.
Yep.
That's just one of the challenges. I don't think maintenance cost for them is getting to be high.
Sure, it makes sense.
So we'll have to just wait and see what the future holds in that aspect. Hopefully we can keep getting buggies. But
yeah, I think it'd be advantageous, especially with all of the small to have that opportunity. But I also understand why cooperatives and dealers might not be interested in.
Right. So what's happening on the farm this week?
Oh, this coming week, I have a husband traveling again, so I am in charge of all feeding. So this weekend is preparing for him to be gone for 4 days. That's our primary goal, is to make sure that I can handle the feeding of animals while he's gone. We're also getting much closer to calving season. We are 2 weeks out from starting. End of this week will put us 2 weeks out from the beginning of calving season.
Okay.
15th of March. So we'll be starting to come into more regular checks on the spring calving groups. I know you don't have very many, but we have between 40 and 50 cows and heifers that are going to calve.
Okay.
And so I actually probably need to get a good count to make sure I know exactly how many animals I have in both fields that I need to be checking on.
Okay. Yeah, we have we're about 60 days out, so we just gave some OC shot, or the E. coli shot, this past weekend. So we're about 60 days out on our heifers.
Okay.
And so we're just kind of waiting right now, kind of holding pattern. So we have engineering days this weekend at the college engineering. So UK E-Day is this weekend. So I'll be there Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 on main campus, having the engineering booth and our RC pulling tractors and all the little display for kids, essentially.
Sure.
For young kindergarten through high school. And so I'll be doing that Saturday. Then probably Sunday, finish up a couple other places I want to soil sample, some other farms.
Okay.
Probably go ahead and soil sample them, and then work on some equipment repair and putting out hay. So that would pretty much take up the whole weekend there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty to do just in putting out hay and keeping equipment running. So, but on top of that, you've had a number of weekends, and then you have this weekend, and then lawnmower clinic the following weekend. So you've had 3 weekends in a row that you've been
here in UK doing stuff on campus. So it definitely takes some time, and you have to just juggle more. So kind of like what you just have to juggle
exactly.
a little bit.
So, okay. Well, we'll see everyone next week with another podcast, but hopefully we will have made it through another weekend and a busy week, and we will see you guys then.
Everybody take care.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.